Hello and welcome to the Linebreak Rugby podcast. This is post-production Sav because we're having a night, well, as you can tell by the title, it's Pro 12 week. And we've decided to actually let the Welsh and the Scots have their own discussion about the Pro 12. So whatever they say is whatever they say. I don't really know yet because I'm in the middle of editing. If you're listening on YouTube, well done. However, there will be links in the description because we have moved over to an audio-only podcast. We will continue to post on YouTube, but we have an RSS feed. We are live on iTunes. We are live on your favourite podcast app. Just stick the URL in or search for us on Podcast Addict or Castbox or whatever you use for your Android phones, and Linebreak Rugby will be there. It's quite exciting. I'm excited. You should be excited. And in the meantime, I will leave you with Euan and CC, and they will talk to you about the Pro 12. Enjoy.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Euan talking here, also known as HMFCalltheway, and we also have CC.
Hello.
Talking us with it. Yep. And we're just doing a little talk through of the fixtures from the Pro 12 this weekend. A little Celtic rugby focus for a change. And we're running into the next three fixtures, sort of decide who gets in the playoffs, and down to the business end of things. So what did we have for results this weekend then? We had...
Let's start with your side of it, your side of things.
What, Edinburgh side of things?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, like the eternal disappointment of Edinburgh this season.
Yeah.
Edinburgh once again crashing and burning at home. That is 7 games in a row we've lost or something like that in the Pro 12. And we've lost all 4 of our games at Mireside. It's not going so great for us this year, but we seem to have an annoying habit of letting teams run up a score against us, and then we come back and look like we're going to win, raise up a bit of hope, and then we just can't quite get there. I know Sav was watching the game as well, and he just sort of got what it's like to be an Edinburgh fan, just the disappointment of it all. Like, we both were watching it, I think, and we both gave up around the 50-minute mark, and then we realised Edinburgh were actually getting back into it. Alright, we'll tune back in. This was after first half where Edinburgh had all the possession but gave away a whole load of penalties. So basically this new gun Crosby, have you heard of him?
No, I haven't.
No. He's the new fly half for Connacht. This is his first start, but he had a great first start, I think it was, and first start as far as I'm aware, and he sorted over every penalty was given by Edinburgh because Edinburgh didn't adjust to the referees adjudicating of the breakdown. And yeah, Edinburgh had possession, but each time they got in their own half, if Edinburgh pushed back into their own half, they gave away a penalty, called it sort of over. So they went down to 16-0 at one point, and I think it went up to 22-0 at one point, and then that's when it sort of phased out for a while. But they came back, got a few tries, penalty try included in that. Looked like there was a bit of hope, and then they just messed up in the last few minutes. So
So from like a bigger picture, at the start of the season, it sort of looked like Edinburgh playing some good rugby. They looked like they were going to be a bit more
open and
a bit more of a threat in the table than they have been towards the end of the season. It was a bit like Cardiff. What do you think? Was there a point in which they started going downhill? Do you think was it or?
It's quite. I don't know. It's difficult for me to say this, but Alan Solomon's actually leaving made it worse for us in a way, because we were a bit more structured with the way he was playing. Like, it was dead boring rugby he played, but Duncan Hodge got us playing a bit more exciting again, but it doesn't seem to be much structure, and the defence seems to have gone quite a lot. There was a few good games with where Duncan Hodge took over. I think he might have lost his first game, but he won his first 2 games in the Challenge Cup, and he had a big win over the Harlequins. But since then it's been pretty poor generally throughout. Like there's a bit more excitement about the team, but that's about it. And it's they're just leaky in defence. They are make a lot of mistakes with like fumbling the ball and things like that. Yeah, it was a disappointment against Connacht because they had a real chance at home, but oh well, it's just been this season. It's not great, and we're waiting for Richard Cockerill to come in.
Yeah, that should be. That was an interesting bit of news this season. I think having him come in.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll? I know you say Edinburgh have sort of gone to a more exciting but less structured.
Well,
Do you think you'll go back to a more structured thing with him coming in?
Hopefully, like I would say we're probably more exciting at the start, but then I think people have realised that it's just like there is more emphasis put into the backs, but like the way that Edinburgh were set up with players and things like that, it doesn't quite work like that for Edinburgh. Like we've just not got the good enough quality backs to play that sort of game really. And but yeah, if Cockrell could sort of put a bit more grit into his team again or something like that, and get a few things sorted. We've also been unlucky with injuries. Like Edinburgh should have one of the best scrums in the league with like Dickinson and Nell and Ford as a front row, but they've just been away with Scotland duty and injuries for the vast majority of the season. And even then, like Sutherland, Dell, Bergen have also been away for a large part of the season, and they would be our replacements after that. So it's really been like McCallum has had to take a huge amount of the responsibility for the front row.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's good players for him to work with, but it's a big job for him. Like I don't think he'll have. He never had to work with Leicester when they were at this lower point in the league or whatever, because I don't think Leicester ever got down to 9th or 10th position in the Premiership, did they? No.
I doubt it. No.
No.
So yeah, that should be good for next season. But I mean, for the next 3 fixtures now coming up, what's your hope? Do you think for Edinburgh now? What's the best case scenario apart from obviously winning all 3? What's the best you hope for?
Avoiding the Italians catching us and being in front of us in the league.
Yeah, that would
because that is a real possibility.
I suppose that's the Pro 12's version of relegation, isn't it? The embarrassment of being caught by the Italians.
Being caught by the Italians, because Edinburgh's next fixture is against Treviso away, and Ospreys found out last week how much of a banana skin they can be away from home.
Yeah.
And they have also got Dragons after that home, which you would usually hope they'd win that, but maybe not current form. And they've got Glasgow at Scotstoun, which I've not got high hopes for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's 2 definitely winnable games in there. For Edinburgh.
But
and you'd hope that would be enough.
You say that.
You'd hope that would be enough to stay out of the bottom 2.
Yeah, like that would be a real low point, because I think we did finish in 11th one year in recent times, maybe, or 10th under Michael Bradley, but that was like that same season we got to the semi-final of the Highgate Cup, so people forgot about that.
Yeah.
So should we switch focus over to the other Friday night game?
Yeah, that was definitely a bit more, I'd say, competitive throughout the game rather than one side dominate one half, one to the other. It was definitely back and forth throughout the whole match. It was a really good game by both sides, actually. Well, there was. I think it looked better than it was because both teams were making an equal amount of stupid mistakes.
Yeah, I remember reading that in the threads. Like people were getting frustrated with it, but there were a few good tries. Ray Lilo had a stormer of a game.
He did, yeah. And Reem Williams, who's he came in for Matthew Morgan. Hasn't been on the best form recently. He's definitely either brilliant or he'll cost you the game. He's in one of those sort of things at the moment. So I think they went a bit safer with starting Reem Williams.
I feel sorry for Matthew Morgan because he gets so much praise at one point and then he just goes a while where he's terrible at defence or something like that, and he's not as great under the high ball, and you can sort of see why Osprey sort of let him go, but then he has his moments of magic and he's just a frustrating player to sort of support.
Yeah. So yeah, with Reem Williams and Ray Lilo, they had great games. Halaholo as well, coming back because he's obviously had a very, very long season. because he came straight in from Super Rugby, so he's been playing almost constantly now for over a year. But yeah, he still had a good game.
You've probably got one of the best centre partnerships in the whole of the Pro 12.
Oh yeah,
That and your back row are like your real strong points.
I mentioned it in the thread, but I think Halaholo and Ray Lilo coming in has been a good a major part of how Cardiff have improved this season. They've been a part of almost every single good attacking move in some way. And I think that not having them would have made things a lot tougher this season, and it's been a tough season. And again, like you mentioned, the back row as well has been such a huge part of it. Especially with Sam Warburton now, he's actually playing games for Cardiff Blues, which he hasn't done for years. And he's in the best form of his life at the moment.
Giving up the captaincy for Wales has probably helped him helped you guys out to an extent. Like, he's not got as much of a responsibility to Wales. He's still got a big responsibility, obviously, but like, he can play more league games probably.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it, but I also think the fact that, I mean, you look at previous years and how few games he's played for the Cardiff Blues. He's basically mainly been an international player. Yet before the Six Nations, he had a good run of maybe, I think, 6 games in a row for the Blues or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how many it was, but it was a good run of games, even for a non-international. And I think people are sort of overlooking that and are putting his form purely on the lack of captaincy. But I also think the fact that he had a good run of games at regional level was a huge part of that as well. But yeah, Nick Williams, I was hoping he'd score a try at Ravenhill, but he didn't quite get around to it.
Please, Ulster fans.
Yeah, they'd love that. But yeah, overall it was definitely improvement from the Gloucester game. I think, again, it was one of the situations where I think for the third week in a row now, you go Leinster, Gloucester, Ulster, the last 3 games for Cardiff. They could have won all 3 quite, if they hadn't made these stupid mistakes that we were talking about earlier, that these things that not being able to finish off from 5 meters out and things like that. They could have won the last 3 games, which is frustrating because it's definitely improvement from previous seasons for the Blues. The fact that they're even in a position to win a game against Leinster and Ulster away. But no, they definitely.
You had such a great start, and it's like you sort of fell away like after 3 or 4 games. Like, it was a bit of a shame in a way. I was really tipping you at the start because, like, I think I talked to you a few times about how strong your team looked. Apart from like your locks and your tight 5, that's probably your weak point. But you looked really strong as a team otherwise, compared like squad wise.
Yeah, it was. I think it was the game against Leinster. I think was our first loss of the season, and it wasn't a bad game, but it was. There was quite a few injuries, I think, around that time, and it was those injuries then that sort of started the downfall.
Yeah, didn't you win your first game against Munster away from home?
I'm not sure if that was the first. That might be the second game.
It
was in that sort of month, that unbeaten month, where we
you beat us in your first game.
Yeah, and then went away, beat Munster, then beat Glasgow at home. So that was sort of, those sort of results, I think, gave people a lot of expectations. I mean, even at that early in the season, people were saying Blues are a top 4 team this year, and obviously that's just way too early to make that kind of assumption. But yeah, I definitely thought the season would have gone a little bit better than it has. I was hoping for top 6, but I think getting a playoff place. Someone mentioned it in the thread, actually. I'm not sure how exactly, because the playoff system is so confusing for the Champions Cup and the Pro 12.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You should just give it to the Challenge Cup winner, I think.
Yeah, but someone mentioned something like how Edinburgh wanted to do Cardiff a favour by beating Connacht, and Blues wanted to win so they'd go up to a different place. But someone mentioned something, if Blues are in a higher place, they play a top 14 team in the playoff, and the lower they play a Premiership team. And
it's something I'm not sure which.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think if you're in a higher place, maybe you skip one of the playoffs or something. I'm not entirely sure how it works.
I think it used to be the case that the Pro 12, as part of getting 2 spots for the Champions Cup playoff, right? They have to have both their teams play away in the first round. So basically, no matter what, it's one team away. But how? I'm not sure. Is it preset who plays an English team and who plays a French team? Because they're both pretty going to be probably about the same strength, really, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I think at the moment the English place team is Gloucester, which is you can't really predict that one. They either turn up or they don't. And a French team.
They've done well in Challenge Cup.
Yeah, and the top 14 is sort of a difficult one because it's such a weirdly changeable league. You could end up with, I'm not sure of the table at the moment, but
I think it could be Toulouse or something
yeah,
like that.
I think
Toulouse aren't mid-table, which you wouldn't want.
Toulon have been sort of hovering around 6, I think, and things like that.
Yeah.
If they slipped into the playoff spot, that would be a disaster for whoever's in the Pro 12 in that playoff spot. So, it's definitely a weird one. I think they should really have stuck with it being the Challenge Cup winner, because then that gives the French teams an incentive to actually turn up to the Challenge Cup matches. Rather than...
It would probably be Brive at the moment that they would play.
Yeah.
Is it the 7th or 8th team, actually?
I think there's 7 teams from the top 14, so it would be 8th place team, I think.
8th place team, so... no, is it 7? Yeah, if it's 8th place, it's Brive. If it's 7th place, it's Pau.
Yeah.
Pau have got a lot of superstars. They've got Colin Slade and Conrad Smith and Stefan Armitage, and they've got basically the whole former Munster back row from about 5 years ago as well, which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
Brive are a bit more of a sort of small budget team, but they actually punch above the weight kind of team.
Yeah.
They had that Socconi guy who was playing in for France against Italy this year, and they seem to have quite a good academy, but yeah, they've got a very small budget.
Yeah, I think whatever it's going to be a tough round of playoffs.
Yeah, Ulster wouldn't have been happy with that draw against you, though. You frustrated them.
Yeah, definitely, and that's helped the Scarlets and the Ospreys, who I think are now in 3rd and 4th. Or Ospreys 3rd, Scarlets 4th, which is good from a Welsh perspective, really. Considering Blues and Dragons fans at the moment can't really hope for anything more this season.
Yeah.
You sort of get behind the other regions and sort of hope they can get a top 4 spot.
When can Dragons fans ever hope for much?
Yeah, I think they're a bit like Edinburgh. They're just hoping to finish above the Italians. That's the aim. And actually, that's a good segue into the next game, because the Dragons did not finish above the Italians this time.
No, they finished.
It was
finished well behind Zebra.
A bonus point loss to Zebra, or I should say, Zebra got a bonus point win. I saw bits and pieces of that match while I was working, and Zebra were playing pretty good rugby.
It was Padavani that got man of the match, wasn't
it? He did, yeah. He scored a 50-metre try, just ran it in all the way. They had some good sort of planned moves and things like that as well. It was.
See, I'm not sure if I want Zebra to do well now, though, because it'll be a bit weird if. Are Zebra definitely confirmed to be in the league next season again?
Well, yeah, we're not even sure what's going on with that at the moment. That it was brought up and sort of left up in the air.
Yeah, because it would be weird if a whole new team was given the Champions Cup spot and Treviso win the Challenge Cup.
Yeah, well, I think if they kept the same players and it was sort of just a change of franchise or something, then maybe you could argue that they should keep their Champions Cup spot, because it was the players that earned it. But you think if they just dump the team completely and go for a new one, then you'd have to say give it to Treviso. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to predict.
They're certainly fighting for they're certainly fighting for their jobs, because they've won 2 games in a row, Zebra, that against Cordon and Dragons now.
Yeah, well,
both beating them at home.
Dragons might not exist next year either. Well, as I say, not next year,
depending on
but
what
in the foreseeable future. Seems like these are the two teams that have their futures in doubt at the moment. With the Dragons possibly moving to North Wales or moving to the Valleys.
Really?
Well, yeah,
I never
there
realised.
was the idea that that after the purchase of the Dragons, maybe RGC would become the fourth region. Or Dragons might leave Newport and move into the Valleys, where they would probably get a bit better support. I don't know.
Isn't Newport like the third biggest city in Wales though? If you count it, it's a small city, but
Yeah, it is, but it's. I mean, you look at like the traditional
and
rugby
you've got
playing areas.
Ebervale
It's the Valleys.
yeah.
It's where the support has always been.
There's still big teams though in Newport, like Newport and Ebervale, and there's a few teams around Gwent, isn't there?
Well, yeah, Ebervale and Cross Keys are probably the biggest
Yeah.
the club teams in the region, and if they move their games there to those grounds, maybe they probably get some good support there, because they don't get, while having a lot of rugby fans, they don't get a lot of top class rugby in that area. They get Premiership rugby, which is improving, but it's not the same. So yeah, that would be. I mean, like they're playing their fixture against Cardiff on the last weekend in Caerphilly's ground, which I still don't get. I don't get why they chose that and not Abu Vale.
What's the name of the stadium again?
It's the Constructor Quote Stadium.
Constructor Quote Stadium. That's a brilliant name. There's a football stadium up here called the Cheaper in Scotland. It's a football stadium, and it's called the Cheaper Insurance Direct Stadium.
Yeah.
That sounds almost like that.
Lower league big business deals is
Yeah.
Great.
That's the kind of thing you get.
So yeah, that was definitely a shock for the Dragons, I think. To lose 29-14. Because I mean, teams have lost to Zebra before, but I don't think it's quite been by that sort of margin.
Yeah, it's always been like Zebra have scraped past them usually.
Yeah.
See, I think this is maybe very simplistic, but like I always seem to get the impression that Zebra seem to either just scrape by wins, or they just lose games. Like, so they get a lot of losing bonus points. I think that's where they get most of the points in recent years. But Benetton and Treviso, they often pull off like upsets at home.
Yeah.
And Zebra sort of changes things around. So like usually it's fight between the Italians, and basically Zebra's tactic is just to get losing bonus points all the time, and Treviso, it's like they pull off a win at home, and that's what keeps them taking over.
Yeah.
And then Treviso get thrashed away.
It seems like every time people sort of say, "Oh, Treviso becoming the more dominant Italian team," and then the next game it's Zebra becoming the more dominant Italian team, while both of them are sitting in 11th and 12th. It's neither of them are. I mean, I think it was 2013. I think Treviso had Italian rugby in general had quite a good season. I think Italy had won 2 games in the Six Nations. Treviso, I think, had beaten Scarlets by something like 40 points at home, or in Llanelli, which was huge, and things were starting to look up. And then looking at the table now, Zebra have overtaken Treviso, which isn't surprising. Actually, only 2 points off Dragons at the moment, which is very interesting, considering...
and not far from Edinburgh as well.
Yeah, only 5 points behind Edinburgh. But if we look at the fixtures here, we've got Dragons aren't likely going to beat Scarlets on Judgment Day. And Zebra, who do they have? Glasgow. Okay, so Zebra probably are going to beat Glasgow. But if Zebra pull up an upset against Cardiff on the last weekend, and Edinburgh beat Dragons, then you could end up with Zebra moving up in the table a little bit, which would be interesting.
It could come down to the final round of fixtures, like all the sort of derbies on the final day, because like Zebra will be hosting Treviso, Dragons could beat Cardiff, you never know.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be.
We'll see with that. Should we move on to the other, the middle of the day game on Saturday? Because that was the one with all the drama.
Yeah, there was a lot of drama in this one.
Yeah.
Mainly for about the last kick. We should go straight to that because that was
Yeah.
so Dan Bigger with the chance for the winning penalty.
Skew whiffy.
There
we go.
With a bandage strapped around his head and blood pouring down his face. Yeah, he probably shouldn't have been on the pitch, let alone taking the kick.
See, I've just watched a replay of that, and it's interesting because he actually had been back on the pitch for about 10 minutes or so it wasn't like he got dragged on the pitch just for that kick. It was like you see sometimes like, oh, you'll just bring this one player back on just so they could do like a kick, or just like if you've got you want one of your biggest forwards in for like a catch at the line out and then drive them all. But he'd been on for a while, and were Sam Davies and Josh Matavesi still on, because they'd be the other kickers.
Sam Davies was on, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
he should have been the one taking the kick because, you know, Dan Bigger said himself in the post-match interview he can't remember the last 10 minutes of the match.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, unbelievable, really.
Scary.
To say that usually they try and hide the fact that they're concussed and have been brought back on. I don't know whether he's trying to sort of publicly give a dig to the Ospreys medical team, maybe that he shouldn't have been put back on or something. I don't know. But it was definitely odd, because you saw that the hit that he had and the way that he went off, he didn't look good.
Yeah. It was a clash of heads with Rhys
Ruddock. It was, yeah, and Rhys Ruddock's a big guy.
See, did he go off with a HIA or was it for a blood injury? Because it was a cut as well, and I'm not sure if it was like they treated it as a blood injury, maybe rather than a HIA.
I'm not sure. I think there was a bit of discussion about that, because if they'd been treating it as a blood injury, then he wouldn't have had a test to pass to come back on. All he had to do is stop bleeding.
That's why he had the big massive bandage around his head.
Yeah.
So that's probably problem solved as far as the coaches think.
So, you know, if he hadn't had a HIA and he's come back on the pitch, that's something that should be looked into. But yeah, I mean, when you've got someone who's, even if he hadn't had a concussion, if you have someone who's had a head injury within the last 10 minutes and you have two kickers on the pitch, surely you choose the kicker who hasn't had the head injury. It seems like an odd choice to do that. But
surely if Bigger was like, well, I guess there's always a problem with head injuries and things like that. Like, a player wants to play on, they don't want to sort of give up. But like, you could also sort of say maybe Dan Bigger should have said himself, like, it's like, I'm not feeling confident about this. Here you go, Sam.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of difficult. Like, it's if he's the main kicker, like, you give him first choice usually, but yeah, it's difficult to decide on that. Oh well, we'll see what happens. There's going to be another investigation into it, isn't it?
Oh, most likely, yeah. They're going to have to look into it. I think if he hadn't have said anything in the post-match interview, they probably wouldn't have. But I think if you're saying on television that you can't remember the last 10 minutes of a match, they're going to have to.
The PR people for Ospreys would have been shouting at the TV or something like that when they saw that. But what's a bit of a shame though is that that incident sort of overlooked Ross Burns' game-winning drop goal for Leinster, because that's what made them win, go from 17 points to 20 points and beat the Ospreys. Like, it was in the last dying few minutes, and it was quite far out he kicked it from as well. I was surprised he got it.
Yeah, it was a good drop goal, and I think under the situation as well, it wasn't even, from what I remember, he wasn't even in the best position to kick it. It wasn't like a perfectly set up drop goal. Ospreys were putting quite a bit of pressure on, and he managed to pull it off quite well. So yeah, it was pretty impressive.
You know, the funny thing about this though, he was the one that gave away the penalty that Dan Bigger was meant to slot over. He was the one that had high tackled Haberfield, or maybe it was one of the winners, not Keelan Giles. I can't remember who it was. But he was the one that put in the high tackle, and then Dan Bigger was meant to set that over, so he could have went from hero to zero very quickly.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Oh, there's another bit of a lot of Ospreys fans booing Euan Athewa for the non-high tackle on Keelan Giles. Early on in the match, he put a very big hit in on Keelan Giles, which is sort of chest height.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, Ospreys fans are very protective of Keelan Giles. And
definitely, he's a baby.
Yeah, after about, I'd say, for the next half an hour or so, every time Euan Athewa got the ball, the whole stadium was booing him. Which it seems very something you don't really see a lot of, unless even when a red carded player comes back on that's a stupid thing to say. A yellow carded player comes back on for a dangerous tackle, they don't get booed. It was just quite odd to see.
Yeah. See, the Ospreys crowd is a bit weird in a way. I think it's a lot like a football crowd in a way often, to an extent.
Yeah.
But it just depends. Like, it's a shame. Like, I would have hoped for maybe a slightly bigger crowd for that game, because like Leinster is their biggest rival outside of Wales, to an extent, and they could have maybe got a bigger crowd for such an important game. But I shouldn't really be talking as an Edinburgh fan about that.
Yeah. Well, the next game was a bit less competitive, a bit less dramatic than that one. Scarlets and Treviso.
Absolute thumping.
Yeah.
I've not really watched that one, but like it's the scoreline tells its own story with that.
Yes, yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't exactly an entertaining match to watch because it was very one-sided, but there was a few good performances in it that were sort of noteworthy from a Scarlet's perspective, and that's James Davis, who I think had one of the games. It's difficult to say he had one of the games of his life when, for a few minutes, they were playing against 12 Treviso players because there were 3 yellow cards at the same time.
12.
Yeah.
Wow, that's something.
And the fact that it's Treviso is enough. But yeah, James Davis had a great game. He's definitely in the Tipperick mould of 7, in that he's sort of half centre, half back row. But
yeah, he set up DTH for his first try.
Yeah, he had a few good runs, but he had one of those games where you say, like, when Tipperick has a good game, it's either a good game as a 7 or a good game as a 13. James Davis had a good game as both. Somehow he was absolutely everywhere. He made I think at least 4 turnovers that I could see that were just direct steals, not even penalties or anything like that. And he was always around there in the back line when you needed him, because obviously he's a 7s player as well. He's quick, he's got good hands, and yeah, he had a great game, as well as Steph Evans, who has sort of definitely gone under the radar this season when you consider Keelan Giles has sort of been the main prospect for Wales wingers coming through.
He will be helped so that he's in a lethal backline for Scarlets. Scarlets have one of the best backlines in the whole of Europe, really. They've got Gareth Davis going to Rhys Patchell, then it's they're probably the weaker ones out there. And then it's Scott Williams, Jonathan Davis. Then you've got Steph Evans, DTH, and Johnny McNichol as well. And you've got Liam Williams mixed in there as well.
Well, on Johnny McNichol, really, I think personally he hasn't been the signing they were hoping for.
Alright.
He seems they've been playing him at fullback a lot, and he seems to struggle with the pressure of playing at fullback. There's a lot of drop balls. There's a lot of stupid passes in their 22. And he seems to get.
I saw his first few games, and that he got injured. So.
Yeah, but he seems to put them under a lot of pressure from that position. And I'd be surprised if he stays in the summer, to be honest, because
really?
Yeah, I don't think he's really given them what they want from that perspective.
But Liam Williams is leaving, so they'd have to keep someone.
Well, yeah, Liam Williams and DTH are leaving, and I think they're hoping to bring in Tom Pridey from the Dragons, which is probably a good move for him.
Like replacement.
But yeah, if I were Scarlets, I would perhaps maybe look to move Johnny McNichol on, and maybe get someone else in, because he's just unless he improves, maybe give him a few weeks at the start of the season to see if he improves. But he's just not been that good, really. He's definitely not been like for Liam Williams.
Yeah. It's surprising that, because he was brilliant for the Crusaders.
Yeah.
Like when he was there, he was like scoring for fun. For
Yeah,
them.
but I think mainly he was playing on the wing for the Crusaders.
Yeah. They put him on fullback.
But Steph Evans can play at fullback as well.
Yeah, right.
And he's obviously been great on the wing for Scarlets this season. But I think that those two, James Davis and Steph Evans, will be on the Wales tour this summer to the Pacific Islands. And
yeah, I can agree with that.
I think if they have as good games for Wales as they have been having for the Scarlets, you could maybe start to see things shifting in the autumn with how the Wales team looks. Especially with Gatlin coming back, who is slightly more liking to change things than Rob Howley is. Yeah, and as we know from the Japan tour in 2013, Robin McBride does like an experimental side.
Yeah. Navidi got his first cap in that.
He did, yeah. And I'm kind of disappointed he hasn't had any more, because he's never really had a bad game for Cardiff.
It's just the Welsh back row is just way too competitive.
Yeah, it's stacked at the moment. And he's sort of stuck between being a 7 and an 8. Navidi, I think, and that's what's sort of pushing him behind. Because I suppose Wales do have a stacked back row, but not really. You can't really think apart from.
Well, it's all sevens.
Yeah, you think apart from Falatau, we don't really have many that you don't have a big 8 or anything like that. You have maybe
Moriarty.
Yeah, but he plays most of his rugby
He
at
doesn't
6.
play in Wales.
You've got Dan Baker, who plays for the Ospreys, but he's sort of hot and cold.
He's
I suppose the next thing we say would be Josh Navidi, who's a great carrier, but he's not big. He's built like a 7. He's not built like an 8.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
So You've got James King as well. Well, is he more of a 6?
You got James King is. I don't know. I feel bad saying it. But I think the best way to describe him is boring. He's a very boring 6. He gets the job done, but when you look at the back row players that Wales have got, you can go to the Dragons and look at Lewis Evans and Nick Curd and Ollie Griffiths, and they've got great back rowers as well. That you'd rather have.
Harrison Keddy's coming through.
Sorry.
You know about Harrison
Keddy?
Oh
yes, yeah.
For the Dragons, he's one for the future.
Yeah, he hasn't really blown up as much, I think, as people expected after that under-20s tournament where he was on fire.
Yeah.
But I think he's had a few injuries since then, and he's been mainly playing, I think, Premiership rugby still this season.
Right.
But yeah, he's definitely another one. But when you look, you've got people like the Scarlets. You've got Josh McLeod coming through. Yes, Josh McLeod, James Davis, the Scarlets.
Shinglow's always good for decent. Is a good performer for Scarlets, isn't he?
He's always sort of there as a. He's fairly solid.
Yeah.
You got Ellis Jenkins at the Blues as well. It's spoilt for choice. Really.
I would never see these players would be Wales quality, but like, who is it? Morgan Allen and Rory Pittman have just sort of disappeared from Scots. Pittman disappeared the season before last, and now Morgan Allen seems to have gone missing as well.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's happened. I think Pittman
just sort of fell away. I know he was like he had one good season, and then his like quality sort of fell away a bit, and he had injuries and things like that. And I think he's been released. And Morgan Allen, I've not seen much of him this season.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of injuries and I think a very competitive back row again.
Yeah.
Because you've got James Davis, you've got Barkley, who's become sort of a Scarlets favourite now.
Yep.
I think it's just struggling to find spaces really in that team.
John Barkley's so much of a fan favourite, I guess you don't mind when Scotland win against you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's the captain.
Yeah, I think that definitely softened the blow for a lot of us. I think a lot of us were hoping he'd be sort of a sleeper agent for Scotland. but no.
He's not the one speaking Welsh, it's his son.
Yeah. And then I haven't seen this match, the last one, Munster Glasgow.
The Munster.
Uh,
Yeah, I watched a bit of it. It was quite a tight game. Not much scoring involved in it. There was only 2 tries apiece. I think there was a bit of controversy about Munster's first try. It was like they weren't sure if they got it down or not, but it was given, and they got that in the first half, I think. And then the second half, I think Glasgow had the vast majority of the possession, and they had like something like 60%, 65% of possession for the second half. And they were pushing, but they just couldn't do anything with it. And then Hogg, with an individual piece of brilliance,
I did see that. Yeah, that was a good try.
Yeah, made a great break down the win, and that was all him. And he did that. And then they were sort of pushing in for the last few minutes, but they couldn't do anything really. There was a lot of talk about this match because Glasgow have really struggled against Munster this year. So that's 4 out of 4 games against Munster they played, and they've lost all 4 of them.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not a record that Glasgow like as a team at the moment. And the first game against Munster this year, I think they might have had a league game before that, but they had their game in the Champions Cup, and that was like the game that sort of turned around Munster's season, because they were sort of like having a poor season to start off with. Like we already mentioned, they lost at home to Cardiff, and then that game they absolutely destroyed Glasgow. Even though they got a red, did they get a red card for Keith Wells in that game?
In the first
Yeah.
Champions Cup match. Yeah.
In the first Champions Cup game, they destroyed Glasgow in that, and the other games they've sort of dominated. And I think Glasgow were just sort of, as a matter of pride, trying to win it away from home. They came close, but like Munster sort of shut them down. Really.
Yeah. Finn Russell. Do you think? I mean, before the Six Nations, people were saying he's a possible Lions 10. Test 10.
Not first choice.
No.
Not first choice, definitely.
But do you think maybe now, these past couple of weeks, he's maybe sort of playing himself off the plane?
I'm not sure if he played himself on the plane necessarily after the Six Nations. If he would sort of be like a wild card pick, like if, say, one of the fly half options got injured, or if they want someone that's good for like midweek games. And he can cover centre as well, which is good for him, but because they're definitely going to take Farrell and Sexton. He's probably in front of Bigger at the moment, and then it's him or Ford probably.
I think you'd say Farrell, Sexton, and Ford are probably the main 3 they're going to go with. But considering Farrell could be going as a 12. Are they going to maybe choose a third 10? Is it going to be Bigger, or is it going to be?
They probably would take another one on top of that, because that's 10 covered enough. I think Russell's next in line after those 3, but yeah, personally I'm not a big fan of Ford. I've always been more of a fan of Farrell to an extent, and I think Farrell they play Farrell and Ford at the same time, and Farrell sort of makes up for Ford's deficiencies as a player often for England, I think, and they do sort of complement each other, but I think Farrell makes up a lot for Ford being there. If that's a weird way of looking at it.
Yeah. I think I always saw it as again like a complementary thing. I'm not sure Farrell maybe be as good as 12 without Ford being at 10, or Ford wouldn't be as good at 10 without Farrell being at 12.
Farrell plays centre for Saracens so often as well, so it's not.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think he prefers playing 10 at Saracens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if they were going to go on the tour, I would be more than happy for the Test Lions team to have Ford at 10 and Farrell at 12.
Yeah.
Or Sexton at 10. But that's a bit off topic. That's for another podcast.
Yeah. So who are your? Do you think it's pretty self-explanatory who's going to be in the playoffs? Like, because it's definitely going to be Munster and Leinster. It's a fight between them who gets the top spot. I think with Munster's running, they maybe got a better run and get top spot, and like well, it doesn't really matter because it's a neutral venue now for the final.
Yeah.
You just want to be in that top 2.
I think Glasgow are pretty much out of it now. Would you say?
Yeah, Glasgow
Yeah,
well away.
the
They can't
top
make
5 is definitely split from the main group. I looking at let's look at the next 3. I can't see Ospreys losing to Cardiff. And I can't see Scarlets losing to Dragons either. Judgment Day.
Yeah. I could see maybe Cardiff upsetting Ospreys, because Ospreys have had a few poor games recently.
Yeah, I mean
they've not been as
yeah.
great.
The thing is that they always turn up for this derby, no matter what form they're in. They always turn up for this match.
All right.
And it's one of those sort of matches where they, a bit like how Edinburgh tend to turn up for the Glasgow derby at home.
You say that, but maybe not.
No,
this.
maybe not this season. But
it did happen this year.
It seems to be like a kind of historic thing, where they just sort of.
Yeah.
It's a definitely more.
There was a time when Edinburgh were the big team in Scotland, and it was like Glasgow turned up for the 1872 game. I'll just tell you. But it's been a long time since that's happened.
Not so much anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, Judgment Day. I mean, I'd be surprised to see anything other than Ospreys and Scarlets wins then. So that puts them in a good position in the table. Munster Ulster. That's going to be a fun one. I mean, from a Welsh perspective, I'd like to see Munster win that one, because I don't think Ospreys and Scarlets have much of a chance of getting in the top 2. I think it's a sort of an Irish fight for the top 2 and a Welsh fight for 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And neither are going to be fun places to travel away for the semi-finals. But you'd think maybe if there's 2 Welsh teams in 3 and 4, 2 Irish teams 1 and 2, could this be the first time a team wins away in a semi-final?
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows?
Not sure about that. We'll see.
And
Ospreys are the only team to win away for the final, though, is it?
yeah, I think so. When finals were more.
Yeah.
Leinster, they got Connacht. I mean, the way both teams are playing at the moment, you'd have to say Leinster are winning that one. So yeah, I think for the next round, as it is going to stay. The round after, let's have a look at that. Ospreys Ulster. That could go either way, really. Scarlets away to Connacht again. I think that could go either way. Munster playing Treviso away. You'd have to say that's a Munster win.
Munster probably gonna.
And Leinster in Glasgow. I mean,
Glasgow could
definitely pull that off.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting one. I think looking at it, like you said earlier, it might come down to the derby day on the last day that decides everything.
Yeah. It's just disappointing as an Edinburgh fan. Nothing for us to play for.
Yeah.
Nothing for you to really play for either. But yeah, should be a few good games to come up. If Leinster have a home semi-final, do they have to play that game in RDS? Because they could move it to Viva if they wanted to get a bigger crowd, but they often have to play games at the RDS just for contractual reasons or something like that.
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think they could move it to the Viva, but you deal with the issue of it's a bit of a last minute thing.
Yeah.
Are they going to get a good crowd? 50,000 seat stadium, or is it just going to look half full? Would it be better to just fill the RDS maybe for the semi-final?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, it's traditionally they go in the RDS for the Pro 12 semi-finals and finals, and traditionally they hammer whoever they play there. So
yeah, because there was a big controversy 3 years ago because Leinster hosted Glasgow in the final, and they wanted to have the final in the Viva, but they weren't allowed to because the RDS the stadium has some sort of contract over Leinster that they have to play a certain number of games in that stadium.
Yeah. Well, it looks like they'll get their wish this year, because I imagine I can't see them not getting to the final.
Yeah.
And they're playing in the Viva anyway, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's basically a home save for them, even if they're second or whatever.
I mean, I'm predicting. I'd like to think to have a nice traditional Ospreys Leinster final, just like the good old days.
Yeah.
But that would mean if things stay as they are, Ospreys having to beat Munster in Thomond Park, which they came very close to, I think, a couple of years ago.
Did they?
In the semi-final. Yeah, they. I think it was only a last-minute Munster score that kept Ospreys from winning it. Jeff Hasser scored a great try in that match.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it wouldn't be surprising if you ended up with a Leinster-Munster final. I think it's been looking that way for a while.
I think that's what most people are looking for.
Yeah.
Oh well. Is there much more to talk about now? No one wants to talk about Melrose Sevens or.
I mean, there's maybe Judgment Day coming up. It's
Judgment Day, yeah.
The biggest sort of regional event, I suppose, in Welsh
because
rugby.
it's all derbies.
And
what sort of crowd are they going to get?
I think this time, maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, they said they sold over 50,000 tickets.
Wow.
It's probably going to be around 60,000 at this point. I'd say maybe a low estimate of 60,000, high estimate 65 for the final amount. I think they do sell a lot on the gate. It was kind of disappointing last year actually because they had 68,000 there last year, which is obviously a huge, great amount for the Pro 12. And they turned up basically for the Blues Ospreys match, and then they had their little 30-minute half time before Scarlets Dragons, and half the stadium had emptied.
Yeah.
And it ended up being quite a poor match anyway, so people left halfway through, and you ended up with maybe 20,000 by the end of the match.
Is it always these matchups that they have for Judgment Day, Scarlets versus Dragons, or do they mix it up, like having like Scarlets versus Ospreys and Cardiff versus Dragons?
Well, it's meant to be an East versus West thing.
Yeah.
And I think Scarlets did play Blues 1 or 2 years. It was, I think, originally meant to be sort of interchanging, so it would be Scarlets, Blues,
Yeah.
Ospreys, Dragons, and then swap it over then next year. But it's been Ospreys, Blues the last couple of years, and Scarlets, Dragons. So I'm not sure what they're doing with it.
I can't see the point really with Scarlets versus Blues because there's not so much of a rivalry. That's like breaking up the rivalries because either way, well, you have Cardiff and Ospreys have a rivalry, and Cardiff and Dragons have a rivalry, and then like I guess Dragons and Scarlets don't have a rivalry, but it's like.
I mean, I think if they wanted to fill the stadium for both games, having Cardiff, Newport, and then Scarlets Ospreys would be the best combination they could go for. Yeah. But it would mean one of Scarlets and Ospreys having to give up a home game for that derby, which neither of them want to do, which is fair enough because they both fill their stadiums for those derbies. So, yeah, that would be the best combination they could go for, but I think they'd have to work out a deal with revenue or something.
Yeah, fair enough. And this is basically your Cardiff's home game, and then Dragons probably like they're gonna get a bigger crowd for this than at Rodney Parades anyway.
Yeah.
So it'll help. Yeah.
So yeah, but it's always a good day out. I mean it's £10 for a ticket to watch 2 matches, which is probably why they get such a big crowd.
Did he shut the roof? Because if they have weather like we're having at the moment and they shut the roof, that's
they didn't shut it last year.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's definitely more weather based than sort of tactic based, like it is with Wales.
Sort of atmosphere,
No, it should be a good occasion. I think Cardiff Osprey should be more competitive of the 2 matches. Scarlets, I'd imagine, the way they're playing, will completely walk over the Dragons. Which is a bit disappointing because you do want to see these kind of games be a bit more competitive, which they would be if they were the biggest rivalries. But that's a different issue.
How did Dragons get on last year? Didn't they actually do okay? Like they got the first try or something like that, and it was a bit of a shock for a while. Am I remembering this right?
Yeah, it started off. I think it was a sort of competitive game, but it wasn't an entertaining one. which is a weird kind of thing to happen, but it just wasn't. It was.
Oh, so
It was
it's like
stop, start,
it's
stop,
like
start. Maybe one good try, and then it would just be back to being scrappy again. Whereas Blues Ospreys was fairly sort of non-stop, kept going. Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
So I think we've covered just about everything for the Pro 12
Yeah, I
this
think we'll
weekend,
give
the next
it
few weeks.
Yeah, that's a good covering of it all. Alright, so should we say goodbye all then?
I think we should. Yeah. We don't have
Yeah,
the
goodbye,
music
folks.
today. Sav's not here.
Sav will have to sort it. Post-production Sav will sort that out.
He'll bring that in.
So, goodbye from me, CC, and post-production Sav.
Goodbye.